Hi, everyone. This is Denise Gwen. And tonight I'm going to share with you my knowledge of the royal family of Great Britain. You may be asking yourself, what on earth does an American girl, well, I'm hardly a girl anymore, I'm a woman, but you get my point. What on earth does an American know about the British royal family? Well, quite a bit. My mother was Welsh, and she was born in 1933 in a remote, tiny fishing village on the north coast of North Wales. So that made my mother, my poor mother has passed, that made my mother a Welsh woman. But she was also a Brit, as in British, and she was a subject of Her Majesty the Queen, Queen Elizabeth II. And even though my mother spent most of her adult life in the United States and raising us kids, she paid a lot of attention to the British royal family and to British politics. She hated Margaret Thatcher with a passion. And I think she had a kind of grudging admiration for Queen Elizabeth II, although there were times when my mother got a bit annoyed with her. This happened many years ago. Queen Elizabeth II went to visit a commoner. She went to the home of some lucky British woman, and Queen Elizabeth II caught a lot of flack for the fact that she went into this lady's house and did not remove her hat. She caught a lot of crap for that, and my mother disdained her behavior as well. Now, my mother adored Princess Diana, as did I. I loved her. I thought she was wonderful. And it's a tragedy that her marriage to then Prince Charles fell apart. And I've read many articles about aristocrats since then. And it's quite the thing if you are a wealthy, aristocratic man of the British classes to have a mistress. It's actually something that wealthy American men do as well. I read a fascinating article in the New Yorker a number of weeks ago about mega billionaires who buy these ridiculously enormous super yachts. And there was an interesting story about this one man who has a mistress and a wife. And when the helicopter pilot is bringing the mistress to the yacht, he has a certain keyword he uses to alert the staff on the yacht to put the mistress's clothes in the closet. On one occasion, apparently, the helicopter pilot got it wrong, or the staff on the yacht got it wrong, but somehow somebody made a mistake. And when this man's wife arrived on the yacht, she found another woman's clothes in the closet, and she was very unhappy. And she let her husband know how deeply she decried this. She obviously knew about the mistress, but hubby was probably moderately respectful about it. But on this occasion, she ripped him a new arsehole, as they say. And the mega yacht owner approached his steward and said, "So-and-so, I hope you never have to deal with a wife who's angry about the mistress. Oh, you poor, poor billionaire. Having to navigate two women, life must just be so difficult." But I digress. Let's get on to the British royal family. Now, aristocrats for centuries have kept mistresses. The French kings did, as did the British kings. Some of the mistresses were far more famous than the properly married wives. And the way my mother used to explain it to me when I was a kid growing up was it was something that just the aristocrats did. Everybody expected it. There was an interesting article I read many years ago about Mitterrand, who was the French president of France. He was the president of France. And he had a secret family that was kind of sort of not so secret. And he had a love child with his mistress. And the wife knew, of course, and didn't say anything, because when you're married to an aristocratic or famous or powerful or wealthy man, you tolerate the mistress because you enjoy your standard of living. So on to Prince Charles. When Prince Charles was a very young man, an attractive blonde woman approached him one day and teasingly told him that her great-grandmother had once been the mistress of one of his great-great-grandfathers, and that was Camilla Parker, who later became Camilla Parker Bowles. And that's how they met many, many years ago when they were both very young. And she became his girlfriend. At a time, Charles was dating a lot of different women. At one point, he dated Princess Diana's older sister, Sarah, I believe her name is. So he knew the family, and in fact, a lot of Americans get this incorrect, but Diana was an aristocrat herself. She was Lady Diana, and her father was the Viscount of Althorp. And he said something very interesting when the engagement of Lady Diana to Prince Charles was announced. Her father said, "I hope he deserves her." Because at the time, everybody was talking about what a coup it was for her to have landed a prince. He wasn't always so princely toward her, though, was he? So getting back to Charles's youth, he dated a lot of women. He dated Camilla. He dated an Australian woman whose nickname was Kanga. So at one point, he was juggling a lot of girlfriends. And he was deeply in love with Camilla. He deeply loved her, but he was ambivalent and he dithered. And while he was serving in the Navy overseas, at last, Camilla decided, "I've had enough," and she married Andrew Parker Bowles. To be fair to Camilla, all women have a shelf life, say, and hers was ticking, and she couldn't bear to wait any longer for Charles to come to the point, because possibly he might never. And he was gone at sea for 18 months without really committing himself to her and telling her how deeply he loved her. So she married her husband, Andrew Parker Bowles. Beautiful marriage. She was a lovely bride, and she produced children for him. Now, while Camilla was busy having a family and raising it, Charles regretted his decision not to marry Camilla. At the same time, he was dating Kanga, and his relationship with her was hot and heavy. Unfortunately, Kanga did not understand British ways, and she was indiscreet, and she started going on cheap talk shows where the hosts, with a wink and a nudge, would tease her about her relationship with Prince Charles. And during these talk shows, she gave up important and secret information about him, so she was indiscreet. At last, Charles, I think, must have had enough pressure from family that he finally started to give Kanga up. She was distraught and very upset and realizing her mistake. And at one point, she flung herself off a balcony and was badly injured. And I think it disabled her for the rest of her life. And Charles was, of course, very sorry, that his mistress had done that, but he still continued to break up with her. At about this same time, he was starting to get pressure to marry. At about this same time that Kanga got pushed off to the side, Camilla had finished providing her husband with a male heir. And the rule is in British aristocracy that once a woman has provided her husband with a son, she's allowed to go off and become a mistress to someone. It's just the way the Brits are. And I think the whole idea of being a mistress to a man is something more acceptable in Britain and France and in the royal classes and in the aristocratic classes and among the very, very wealthy billionaire Americans. The way my mother used to put it to me was, it sounded like, nobody minded. I've only come to realize as the years have gone on how much wives detest this, but they put up with it. I'm getting ahead of myself. So at one point, Camilla was freed of her obligations to be a good wife to her husband, and she started carrying on with Charles quite openly. At about this time, he was getting tremendous pressure to marry, and he was supposed to marry a virgin, and he was supposed to marry a lady of the upper classes, and Lady Diana was an aristocrat herself. In fact, as my mother put it, his family used to swim at her family's swimming pool in the summers because they had a heated pool. So she wasn't somebody he didn't know. They'd met when she was a young girl, and he must have liked her. And I saw an interesting short on YouTube of moments when Diana and Charles were affectionate with each other and kissing each other in public, and it was very touching, and it broke my heart a little because she entered into the marriage with an open heart. He didn't. I mean, who can forget that famous interview where the interviewer asked her, "Are you in love?" And she said, "Oh, of course." And he said, "Whatever love is." Lovely. Oh, Charles, you could be such a twit. And my mother had loved Charles as a child. She thought he was very sweet, and she didn't like the way the Queen raised him. But she wasn't so keen on him when he started mistreating Diana. There were times in the early years of the marriage when they appeared to be a happily married couple. Diana found out shortly before the wedding that he actually was very intimately involved in Camilla Parker Bowles' life, that she was more than just a close friend, because she and Diana went on outings together, and Diana had no idea Camilla Parker Bowles was her soon-to-be husband's mistress. And as her older sister told her when Diana thought of calling off the wedding, "You can't. Your face is on all the tea towels." So Diana went through with the wedding. She made the best of it, but it didn't work out well for her. Unfortunately, she wanted a husband who was hers, and I totally understand that. And she would have been so much happier if Charles had broken it off with Camilla, but he didn't. Shortly after Harry was born, Diana reported she and Charles were the closest and most in love they'd ever been together in their entire married life. It's so sad they didn't stay happily married. It's such a shame. She divorced him, but it was becoming intolerable for both of them. So as you can see, I'm an American, and I know way more about the British aristocracy than I really ought to, all thanks to my mom. But I think my mother saw something in Diana that I only came to realize later, what a wonderful, special person she was. In any event, Annabelle Goldsmith was married to Harry Goldsmith, and they were Brits. Annabel Goldsmith is still alive, I believe. Annabel Goldsmith was married to a wealthy man named Harry Goldsmith. Harry Goldsmith was a Brit and incredibly wealthy. And he married Annabel and they had children together. But she always knew that he had a mistress. He always had a mistress. And she was willing to accept it. It's something, I think, that is ingrained into the British culture. It's just accepted. Now, in modern times, it isn't as accepted. And modern women don't like the idea that someone like Prince William, for instance, would ever carry on with another woman other than Catherine, who has worked very hard to get him. And Annabel Goldsmith tried to caution Princess Diana to put up with the mistress, to accept it, to not be angry and upset about it. She tried counseling Princess Diana. And Harry Goldsmith loved his wife Annabel, and he created a famous bar called Annabel's, named for his wife. He later died, conveniently. Good for her. She outlived him. And Annabel was alive to give an interview for Vanity Fair that ran a number of years ago after Diana had died, in which she had talked about her relationship with Princess Diana when she was trying to encourage Diana to just kind of let it go, you know? And there's an expression the Brits use, or maybe there's an expression that aristocrats use, that when a man marries his mistress, he creates a job opening. Isn't that lovely? Isn't that smashing? Oh, stupid men. They can get away with it. So, that's what I know about mistresses and husbands of the British royal family. And this whole debacle about Prince Harry, it breaks my heart, because if Princess Diana were still alive, she would have counseled her son how to conduct himself better, and she would have been able to help Meghan navigate the waters of the British royal family. And perhaps they might not have reached the point where they felt the need to leave and travel to America. I feel sorry for them. I don't know how it will turn out for them. I wish the best for both of them. Harry was such a cute, sweet, funny little boy. Who can forget him as a little boy sticking his tongue out at the photographers while in a car? He was always impish and naughty and funny and just such a cute, sweet little boy. So I hope it works out for them. But in any event, Charles finally married Camilla. She finally got accepted into the royal family, and there was something interesting about Diana. She did come to kind of maybe not like Camilla, but she came to admire her for her loyalty. Through all the years when Charles was dithering from this mistress's bed to another, when he married Diana, and when Camilla tried to befriend her, Camilla stood by his side. She bided her time, and when the time was right, she finally came out from the cloister of her marriage. Her poor husband, poor bastard. Can you imagine how hard that must have been for him, being married to a woman who really wasn't in love with him? Anyway, so she married Charles, and he seems to be very happy now, married to the love of his life. Camilla really is the love of his life. He did love Diana, but he didn't love her the way he loves Camilla. Anyway, so that's what I wanted to share with you about my knowledge of the British aristocracy and the whole business of mistresses and wives. Thank you for listening.